So we come to the first day of May, 1953, in the outworking of our GPC servers training class. And rumors reached me that some of you didn't recognize what I was doing yesterday for a while. But I thought that was a good opportunity to give you some of the basic principles of meditation. Now, I do not mean by that I necessarily utilize the principle quite to that extreme. After you reach a point of oneness, you don't have to meditate on things of that nature. The only thing you have to meditate upon after you reach a point of oneness is the vibratory factors you're dealing with, not the things of reality, not the things of God, not the things that are real, not the things of truth. But you do have to meditate upon the vibrational factors you're dealing with in relationship to the processes of maneuvering them, bringing them to point, dealing with them in various ways. So, once we reach a point of actually working from within outward, so that we're not seeking to work from the outside inward, our meditations are upon the factors with which we deal. And there's no necessity of meditating as such upon the truths of being. And in this connection, we have opportunity to emphasize a very important point, and that is that the less you try to work from the outside in, as if you were trying to get in, the better off you will be. The human tendency is to try to get within or work toward the inside. I suppose that tendency comes from the old pattern of human concept, where it is assumed that there must have been an apple growing on the forbidden tree, and Eve ate the apple, and she found a worm. And she was so startled to find the worm that she felt like one. And ever since then, people have been trying to work from the outside in. But you see, that isn't God's way. God's way is working from the inside out. And as long as you're trying to work from the outside in, you're running contrary to divine action. You're doing something that is not in harmony with or alignment with what God is doing. God is working from the inside out. Now we speak of the Father within, the necessity of functioning on the basis of that which is of the Lord within. But trying to get in to find it is one of the most futile endeavors in which human beings can engage. Trying to meditate on a basis of getting into the Lord within, is utterly futile. It doesn't work that way. You need to begin to realize that your problem is to begin to come into alignment with that which is of good. When your mind begins to be aware of the truth, and you have an opportunity to definitely recognize that it is the truth, and on the basis of right response you have confirmation from within yourself, if your mind is not filled with some prejudice or fixation pattern, or if you're not controlled by some escape mechanism, you have a confirmation from within when you hear the truth. And then you know the truth. Then, without regard to anything else, you begin to function on the basis of the truth. No matter what feelings or beliefs or concepts or ideas there may be, no matter what may tend to come up from the subconscious realm, you remain true to the truth. And it is only as you are honest enough to remain true to the truth, without regard to control through feeling, that you can begin to experience the individual fulfillment which is in harmony with the divine pattern for you. What then do we do? Divine action is already a reality once you begin to recognize that truth and accept it. Many of the pitfalls and difficulties are immediately removed. The human being imagines that God is withholding his action, that he has to be begged into action, or that he has to be mollified in some way to make him even consider acting. But that is not the case. God is already in action with respect to all things whatsoever. There is no problem but what God is already acting with respect to the solution of that problem. There is no need but what God is already acting with respect to the process of filling that need. There is no necessity for expansion of consciousness and understanding but what God is already acting with respect to providing the means for that expansion of consciousness, that increase of vision. Once you begin to actually accept the truth that God is already in action with respect to all things needful within the scope of your awareness and beyond the scope of your awareness, you begin to be in position to work with God and to learn to let God work through you. Once you actually realize that God's pattern of action with respect to the needs that are present in the world, all of them without any exception, is not in any sense confined to the scope of your awareness, but is on the basis of all needs for all people at all times, you can then begin to recognize why the self-active rearrangement of the divine pattern of action within the scope of your consciousness nullifies you. Because the divine pattern of action has taken into consideration all needs, not just those of you here, but the needs of every human being on the face of the earth, the needs of nature, and every need, without any exception, that rests within the picture, the process of restoring the whole earth to the Edenic state. So, if God is in action already with respect to all of these things, our problem is to learn to share God's action with respect to those things that come within the scope of our responsibilities and capacities. Now, God does not ask of you anything that is actually beyond your capacity, although you may think He does. Most human beings have a very limited concept with respect to their own capacities insofar as reality is concerned. They may think they have a great capacity for doing wrong or functioning in some self-active manner, but generally speaking, human beings have a very limited concept of their own capacity for doing the right thing, for sharing divine action. So, while God's requirements of you may seem to be far beyond your capacity to fulfill, they actually are not. And if we did not maintain a pressure causing you to exert yourself beyond your immediate consciousness of capacity, you would never grow. If there was no pressure, nothing to urge or inspire you to go beyond the limit of what you think is the best that you can do. That's why I never accept your best as good enough. Never. It's fine, I thank God for it, but I never accept the best that you have made manifest as good enough, because I know that you have a great deal more capacity than you have yet discovered in relationship to yourself. And when you start excusing yourself for having, well, less capacity or less function within the range of capacity than you know you ought to have, then you are in trouble. Because the best that you're aware of isn't good enough. Ever. I'll accept it for the moment, but that's all. We have to recognize that only under a certain amount of pressure can you grow. There is a saying in certain parts of the country, South or Iowa, to illustrate, that you can hear the corn growing. You go out in the cornfields on certain hot days. They're being muggy and hot and uncomfortable probably. But they say you can hear the corn growing. Well, now actually you don't hear it growing. What you hear is the result of its growing, however. It's under pressure. Under pressure to expand. And in the joints where the leaves fit on the stalk, there is a process of slippage as it grows. So when it grows, there's a slippage in those joints. And you can hear the little poppings that result. So while it's not quite accurate, it's reasonable to say that you can hear the corn growing. You can hear the results of its growing. But why does it do that slipping? Because it's under pressure. Under pressure to grow. All growing works out under a certain amount of pressure. But you reach a point where pressure is not uncomfortable, where the pressures of reality never produce discomfort. In fact, they produce joy, pleasure, satisfaction, far beyond the power of my words to describe. But you need to realize that you must be under pressure to truly grow. And once you begin to let those pressures be designed by God, they are all pleasant, comforting, beautiful, divine. If pressures make you uncomfortable, it's because something is there which God did not design, He did not establish. You are responding in some fashion to some unreal thing, or you are under the necessity of dealing with some unreal thing. Now, I am under the necessity of working under uncomfortable pressures very often. Why? Because human beings within the scope of my responsibility begin to function on an adverse basis. They let some unreal pattern enter into the picture. They have some wrong type of reaction. Well, I've accepted that individual, which includes all of you, into the pattern of my own personal hedge, to take care of you, to protect you as much as you will let me. Those who go out from that, of course, they're no longer my responsibility. I pay no attention to them. But those who still remain in it, they are my responsibility. And those who are moving toward it, they are my responsibility. And I do everything I can to inspire and protect and encourage, strengthen, so that each may move as rapidly as he or she will along the way. Then all of those who have been so accepted are within my own personal vibratory pattern, or hedge of radiance, whatever you want to call it, the expanded expression of the pneumoplasmic sphere. And anyone within that sphere has been accepted as a part of myself, to whatever degree of response there is. Whoever it is, that person has been accepted, as far as I am concerned, as a part of myself. And that means that I have accepted at least a share of responsibility with respect to what that individual does. And if that individual has a false reaction, does something wrong, I either have to share the pressure, the suffering, if you please, or segregate that person from my body. I have no other choice. And I don't segregate people from my body. I wait and let them do it. If they go out from it, that's their business. But I never remove anybody from it. I let them remove themselves. If they must act as refuse, well then, so be it. But while any human being is within the scope of that hedge, he or she is a part of me. I have accepted it so, whether the individual involved realizes it or not. And the pressures that develop are within the scope of my own being, not my personal responsibility in the sense of me as an individual, but my personal responsibility in the sense of me as a body of many members, or my body of many members. Because you could not have any process of growth or development or progress or blessing here except in that position. You're not a segregated individual once you begin to respond and move into the pattern here. You're a part of my body. And as such, that which works through you influences my whole body, and I feel it. I must of necessity work with it. And those pressures are sometimes very uncomfortable. Sometimes I can protect the individual involved from the results of his own actions, and sometimes I cannot. But that moves into the realm of intercession. You cannot actually perform intercessory work for anyone who has not accepted, in part at least, the responsibility and privilege of being a part of what you are. It's only within the scope of the body. Now, the body extends over all the earth, in actual fact. The body is not fully formed over all the earth, but the vibratory chords of its initial beginnings extend over all the earth at the present time. When you begin to actually realize that this is the case, and that you cannot do anything wrong without hurting others, and without making it difficult for me, without throwing an extra load, an extra unnecessary burden upon others, you begin to realize that that type of function is disservice. It is not serving God, it is not serving man, it is not serving yourself, it is not doing anything that is worthwhile. It is serving the devil. So, what is the divine pattern of action in which you may share? God is in action with respect to all things whatsoever, with respect to every need, in you or in anyone else. Whether there is a response or not, and at the point of proper response, you can connect up with the pattern of divine action. But it must be within the scope of the divine design before the effectiveness of that contact can begin to truly manifest. You have to begin to yield to that divine pattern. So, instead of trying to move from the outside in like a worm, that's why human beings feel like worms, they're trying to go in the wrong direction, they begin to let that which is of God come out through them. They begin to deliberately, consciously come into alignment with that which God is doing. What is your God being doing? I have pointed out that your God being is responding to the Lord of Lords, and that is true. But on what basis does your God being respond to the Lord of Lords? Within the scope of the pattern of the divine design. I came into the world for a specific purpose. Every God being of every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth is responding to me, without any exception anywhere. Every God being of every man, woman, and child, high or low, white or black, it makes no difference. I came into the world to fulfill a mission in relationship to this process of outworking. And without one single exception, every God being on the face of the earth is already responding to me. Not me as a man, as you see me in the outer sense, perhaps, in the sense of the external revelation of the fact, but from the standpoint of the inner vibrational factors, as far as the God being is concerned, that centering is there. And no God being attempts to bypass the focalization on earth. No God being, whether in you or someone else, anywhere, never violates that focalization. When human beings imagine that they can do something that the God being cannot do and does not do, they're wrong. They can try, they can spend their lives, the periods of existence on earth, trying to do something else, but it doesn't work. Once any human being begins to realize that there must be a focalization on earth if the divine plan is to work on earth, we can see how important it is. God's will is to be done on earth as it is in heaven, in exactly the same manner. The divine pattern comes to a point of focalization in heaven. If it is to work in exactly the same manner on earth, it must come to focalization on earth. There is no other way. Anything else is utterly impossible. So, we begin to realize the wonderful privilege and glorious responsibility we have here. Not to go out and try to talk to other people about what I've just said. That would only turn them away, only confuse the issue. It is not in any sense necessary. But it is necessary that you begin to realize the reality of your own privilege and responsibility as a member of my body on earth. And until you so do, you cannot respond to the Lord of Lords. You cannot fulfill His will if you, as a human being, violate his will as it is done in heaven within you. In the heaven within you, your own Lord does not violate his will according to that divine design. And the focalization must be on earth if there is to be a fulfillment on earth. Now, as we begin to recognize these things, we can readily see that man, trying to work from the outside in on some particularized basis of attaining spiritual illumination or progress of some kind for himself, is violating the basic commandments of God, as surely as if he went out and undertook to deliberately do evil. Why is it that the so-called good people suffer the same problems, the same difficulties, the same illnesses, the same miseries that the so-called evil people do? This is the reason. Because in their very efforts to do what they think they want in relationship to God in the spiritual processes of growth, they violate the law. They work contrary to the law. And they suffer the ill consequences. Until the human being stops trying to get into God, stops wanting, stops trying to impose his will, his determination, he cannot begin to know the fulfillments of reality. But you say, well, I want to have spiritual development so that I can go out and bless people. I want to be illumined. I want to have this and that and the other thing so that I can render a greater service. All right. Your motivation is, in a sense, all right. Your intent is all right, but your function is wrong. And if your function is wrong, you will not get the results, even though you are very sincere. If you're very sincere and try to operate an automobile on a basis that does not recognize its design, no matter how sincere and earnest you are, no matter how hard you push, it won't work. You can wear yourself out pushing an automobile around over the country if you want to. But you will never get the automobile to operate unless you recognize the principles on which the automobile was designed. And so it is with you. God is in action from heaven out through the earth, working from the inside out. And when you begin to accept the reality of your polarity with God without having first to be convinced of all of its factors, when you simply accept the truth because you see it and yet do not know it in the sense of full experience, and remain true to that, it begins to move out through you. You begin to be conscious of what God is doing. It begins to move you. You begin to speak and act in the current of what God is already doing. And then, divine action through you, and there is growth. There is illumination. The gifts of God, full and free and beautiful and complete, ready to be given to you as soon as you stop trying to get them. As soon as you begin to be a channel for their delivery into the earth. It is not a question of whether there are blessings, whether God wants to give blessings. God's problem has been to find someone who would act as a delivery truck, a means of conveying them into the earth. And once you begin to let them be conveyed, you share them. They manifest through you. and you begin to be that which manifests by reason of your life. It's so simple, it's so easy. Human beings have struggled for so long trying to make it work in some other way, but it doesn't. They can flounder around in attempts to make the mind accomplish something or other. They can work with memory, they can work with whatever they can get their hands on, all kinds of ways. Many of these efforts were brought to a very fine point of development in India, for instance, long years ago. The patterns of self-activity which have kept humanity bound. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the forbidden tree. But God is in action, and if you let him act through you, by simply responding, letting it appear in the little things and in the big, the process works out so easily, so naturally, and so quickly. And you begin to be a blessing to those who share your body of being. For if it is my body of being, of which you are a member, it is likewise your body. It couldn't be more your body if you were the focalization point for it. Is your toe less a part of your body than your ear? Or consider any combination you wish. It's your body. It's my body, yes. But until you begin to actually realize that it is your body and that you have responsibilities in it, you have privileges, you cannot begin to come into that alignment where you are true to the truth and you let divine action appear through you. So, I gave you a little demonstration of the basic principles of meditation. The process by which you may come into alignment or attunement with the currents of truth in God's revealed Word. You can meditate upon the words of Scripture found in the recognized Bible, or the words of Scripture which I have made available to you, and by such a process begin to feel and know and comprehend the spirit of it, the movement of it, the reality of it, so that expressing through you, it becomes the manifestation of the reality of your own being. God's way does not take anything away from you. The fact that I provide the focalization on earth does not detract from you one iota. How many of you would like to undertake to go through this process without any assistance from me? Well, your presence here is answer enough. Then, what is it that you should do? You should recognize that you cannot be something other than you are, and that God is not going to take away from you that which you are. No matter what method you try to use, you could not become, in any sense of reality, something other than that which you are. and God is not going to take that away from you. You couldn't be other than that, no matter who was here or who was not here. You couldn't be happy in being or trying to be something other than that which you are in reality already. Trying to be something other than that only defeats you. And every part needs every other part. I need you, you need me. I need every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth, without any exception. From the standpoint of the God beings involved, they're doing their part. But human beings haven't learned to come into alignment with that which God beings are doing. Once they do, all is well. The rest is so easy, so simple, so beautiful, so wonderful. And once you begin to work actually from the inside out, letting it be God's action through you, you do not have to meditate upon yourself. If, for the moment, you could imagine that this is not, in fact, the physical world around us. That anything that we see here is to be seen as symbolizing something else. And being in this position in the heavenly realm, we see this object. We accept that it is there. We do not stop and undertake to meditate to convince ourselves that it is there. We know it is. Do you have to meditate to convince yourself that that glass is there? Here is a plant over here by the window. Do you have to meditate on convincing yourself that it's really a plant? You might, if you were skeptical, go over and touch it to see if it's an imitation. But it's a real thing. It's a living plant. And it's there. And there is no necessity for you to try to meditate to convince yourself that it is. You do not have to meditate to convince yourself with respect to anything that you know. Isn't that right? You do not have to meditate to convince yourself of anything which you know. If I know that this table is here, I do not spend the whole hour trying to convince myself that the table is there. I just don't believe it. I 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 don't believe it. What hurts me? It isn't there. Why should it hurt me? It isn't there. Why should it hurt me? Ouch! I don't believe it. Now that's exactly the way most human beings act, believe it or not. You do not have to convince yourself through meditation of the things which you know. And if you know the things of reality, you are not under any necessity of meditating in order to know them. Are you? No. From the standpoint of our ministry on earth, when we work from within outward, we have to meditate upon the uncertain factors with which we are dealing. Can I say, well, I know that this member of my class is going to carry through thus and so, and I can be absolutely certain that he or she will have reached such and such a point by such and such a date. As yet, you're all question marks to some degree, all X's in the formula. Oh, I know what you are inside. That's not the problem. I know what you are inside, from the standpoint of your God being, from the standpoint of your reality, from the standpoint of your true potential. I know what you are. I don't have to convince myself of that or try to find out what it is. There's no problem. But the question mark is, how well are you going to let that come out? What is there here that I can absolutely depend upon so that a creative cycle may be initiated and I can be absolutely sure that it will come out so, because everyone can be trusted. Everyone will stay true to the truth. There'll be no reactions, nothing to spoil it. It'll all work just the way God intended it to. When we work from within outward, we must meditate upon the things which we cannot say that we know. And can I say that I know just what you're going to do? When? How? As you learn to maintain polarity and stay steady, I can begin to depend upon you. I have no other choice. I begin to depend upon you so that you may begin to be a part of the body. And we open a cycle to carry blessings to others. Certain pressure comes. Things begin to move. There's a little power starting to manifest. And then if you give way, well, that's just too bad. The blessings didn't get out to those out there. We have to stop and repair the machinery and start over again. As long as the machinery keeps breaking down, it doesn't make any difference what God does. The fact that He's doing something has no meaning on earth. He too must wait while we repair the machinery, get human beings worked out to a point where they're willing to take some responsibility, hold steady, remain true to the truth, let the power begin to work, let the pressure begin to come, let the force begin to have meaning, and we begin to move again. And whether we go 3 inches or 5 feet or 10 miles depends on how well the machinery holds together. If you've ever been driving an automobile and have the experience of having it break down every little ways, or the tires go out, or something, you know how exasperating it can be, always having to fix something. But the Lord is merciful and patient, and as long as the individual has anything at all to offer in potential in the outer sense, He keeps the door open for that individual. And the working of God is from within out. And once we begin to work in the same direction in which God is working, once we begin to work in the same direction in which God is working, something starts to be what it ought to be. Do not imagine you're so far ahead of God He'll never catch up if you start working in the direction He's moving. And don't imagine that you're so far behind God that He'll never pay any attention. This present moment is the present moment for God too, not just you. This present moment is the present moment for God, for all God beings, just as surely as it is for you. And once you begin to let it come from within outward, you begin to be what you ought to be. How do you share these things? By reason of their expression through you. If you're going in some other direction, can you begin to share them? No, because you will not be where they are. And how can you begin to share? In giving, in serving, in doing, in action. in action in the Spirit of the living Christ. You know something about the reality of that Spirit. You do not have to try to get in to find it. It's there. You can begin to act in that current and remain true to it. And it's there. Blessed ones, God in action on earth through you becomes a reality as you let yourselves begin to truly give, truly serve, in a spirit of true thanksgiving. Thanksgiving for the privilege, the opportunity, and the responsibility. If you serve to get, you're working contrary to God's plan, and it doesn't work. You never get connected up with Him. If you give to get, you're going in the wrong direction. If you're trying to utilize these opportunities and privileges for some purpose of self-aggrandizement, you'll fail. Why? Because you're going in the wrong direction. You're trying to move in the opposite direction from God. You're setting yourself up to be as God, to be as great as God, to be as powerful as God, to be as eternal as God, to be as wise as God. You're going to choose your own course and overcome God so that you can be the God of all the universe. How senseless can human beings get? How foolish. When you stop trying to work counter to God and stop excusing any counter pattern of action, you can begin to move with the tide of eternity. You can begin to move with the movement that has been from eternity and is to eternity. You're moving with the stream of being in the currents of life. You begin to let the beauty of the truth manifest in the realm for which you are responsible. You begin to do. And God is in action on earth because you live. You know, meditation, yesterday we were considering the principles involved in letting blessings find expression on earth, of being a blessing to others or conveying blessings to others. The process of attunement. And we began to see something. No doubt your pattern of meditation allowed you to comprehend a good deal more than I presented in words. But you began to realize that this portrayal with respect to Jacob's blessing to his 12 sons is a portrayal of world history. A portrayal of the vibratory factors working out from the beginning, from the time that man was created, through the cycle of man's fall, the outworking of the steps to this present time. And when we come to the end of the blessing, we see two things revealed by two sons. Joseph, revealing the process which we are sharing at the present time of bringing about the restoration, and Benjamin, showing the result, the outworking, as it applies to the self-active ones in the world. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. The outer appearance of things, some going up and some going down, some letting the will of God be done and some refusing. The outer battle, the realm of the self-active ones, and what happens? What happens in them and through them and to them? Here is the picture of world history in the process of the fall. We remember that the firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength, where on earth? Man was the beginning of the manifestation of God's strength on earth, wasn't he? So that God could begin to do in this realm of things that which was according to the divine design. The excellency of dignity, divine men and divine women, the excellency of dignity, the pattern of nobility, which God established for men and women, and to which he would return them. For God is not seeking to degrade human beings or make them feel low so that he can thereby feel that much higher. He is under no such necessity. He wills that you should be a noble man or a noble woman, revealing the excellency of dignity, revealing the beauty of truth, revealing the reality of eternal life, centered in the wonder of everlasting love. And so, we are working out to the restoration, to the reality of might, and the beginning of strength and the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. That's what was in the beginning, and that is our goal today. That these things of God may be made manifest on earth because we live.